Hi, I'm Steve Nathans Kelly, editor of Streaming Media Producer. Recently, I had the chance to speak with Alex Garcia, chief meteorologist at KABB Fox San Antonio, about how he made the pivot, as so many of us have had to do over the last few months, to remote production, both with nightly newscasts and also with a weekly program that he does called Hurricane Center Live. And what's interesting about how Alex has done it is that instead of just being that one guy remoting in, he's actually got a full throttle, multicam, live switched, green screen equipped setup at home that he's been using for these broadcasts almost from day one. I've been fascinated just through a lot of interviews I've done this year, just seeing how people, kind of had to do this flip, right? People had to go to remote, and it seems like in your case, doing a daily news broadcast, you probably had to do this at kind of lightning speed.
Yeah, we did. I mean, it had to come really quick, particularly for our conference, because we were watching to see what was going to happen with the COVID thing. And when it finally got to the point to where we realized this is not going to happen, we had to contact all our sponsors and tell them, we're not canceling, but we are pivoting. And this is what we're pivoting to. A live television show, a live broadcast, part webinar, part interview show, part talk show, once a week. And they were all for it. They said, okay, go for it. Let's see what happens.
And so were you doing any kind of, remote production before this? Did you have the gear on hand? What was involved in the switch, the pivot for you?
Well, the only thing I was really doing, it was associated with the station. I was doing a Facebook Live every afternoon from the station there, and just plugging in using the web presenter, plugging in the actual output to the weather computer, and just bringing it up and doing about a 30-minute little discussion with viewers, and we would get some fairly decent good viewers. The average viewership was about 4,000 to 5,000 every afternoon. I kept touting it as the only 30-minute weathercast you're going to get in prime time, and one where you can actually get your questions answered right up front instead of just watching someone on TV. So it turned out pretty good. Severe weather, it got into the hundreds of thousands. And when we had a couple of hurricane hits, it was up over 2 million, which was kind of eclipsed some of the television stations.
You had been doing this show for a while, right?
Just the little Facebook thing. I hadn't really done the NWCT Live. I hadn't done that at all. The only thing that we'd kind of done close to that was at the conference. We had one of the television studios, the ATEM TV studios, and we'd use that to kind of put the presentations up on the big screen. But at the same time, we had the output going to an output streamer, an encoder, and then we'd output it to Facebook. But that is about as close as we were ever to doing anything like what we're doing now.
And so are you hands-on with the gear, or do you have a small crew, or
Yeah, you're looking at him. This is the crew. I worked radio for many years, and as a radio DJ, you're doing it all. You're doing the mics, the logs, getting in the computer and putting in the computer stuff, and getting the commercials to play and the jingles to play at the right time. So you've got an array of buttons out in front of you that help you do things when you need to get done. And so I took that knowledge and that experience and put it into what I do here. So it's a one-man operation, but I've set it up so that I'm doing the job of about 3 different people.
Yeah, we do a conference, a stream media conference, and we had a guy once who was talking about how to do your own Facebook Live show, your own broadcast. And so, he's got he's switching it live. He's got bringing in a lot of graphical elements and stuff.
Yeah.
But he said, I come from radio, so don't try this at home,
That's right. It's all our old radio guys know how to do this. I mean, we know how to kind of set things up because that was our mode operandi. A lot of the times they sent you out on remotes and all they gave you was a postcard. So you really had to come up with stuff. 2 or 3 60-second spots, plus you had to play this and play that. And so you kind of knew how to set things up to make it work right. And that's kind of the mentality that we've used to keep this program up and going.
And so are you also doing weather, daily weather news broadcasts remotely?
Yes, I'm standing right in my little studio at home right here. The chroma key screen is right behind me. This is where I do weather from. The monitor's right there, so I can just turn and look at it. I do all of the webcasts from here. I do the what we call wake up weather from here. And on occasion now, when we have late nights or other things where it's just we've got a game or something, this is where I'll actually do my weathercast from right here. For several months in March, April, May, and June, and July, we did everything from here, weathercast, everything. And it looked pretty good. Viewers couldn't really tell that I was standing right here at home doing weathercast.
And so when you were doing that as part of a news broadcast, so how was the rest of the broadcast coming together at that time?
At that time, and it still is, we have our anchors. We only have one anchor who's in studio. And then the others are out at their homes with a laptop in a live view, and they bring them in on the different live view channels. I'm on a live view as well to the station, so I broadcast out through the live view. And then they're in master in production control. They bring all the elements together and mix them so that it's really difficult to tell, at least for the weather segments. As I've watched, you can't really tell I'm not there.
Sure, and so they've got probably a smaller crew than usual in the kind of a distance.
Most of the station already is run through robotics anyway. So all we had is a floor director and a teleprompter operator, and those of us who are on air. And so on a typical night when we're doing like that, there's a one anchor, there's the floor director, and then there's the teleprompter operator. And in the control room, since it's all done by robotics, there's one technical director and the producer. That's it. That's the crew.
And so you were able to make a sort of March 14th to 15th pivot probably easier than a lot of stations.
Right. We already had that little the little ATEM HD studio. So all I did was pull that thing around, plugged it in, put in my cameras, and pulled up the chroma key wall and turned on the chroma key, and here I am. I'm good to go.
Just kind of walk me through the gear that you're using, and I assume you're using some portion of it right now, right? I mean,
yes. In fact, I'm using the exact system that we use right now to broadcast out and to do NTWC live. We started with that little ATEM studio, and that was just it's A/B punch. One camera here. We had a laptop, and then another laptop, and that's how we started on April the 2nd with our live show. Quickly realizing I couldn't just do something that simple and keep our sponsors happy. I wanted to increase the production value and get it up close to what you'd see on network. And so in order to do that, I had to spend a little extra money. And the equipment that I have here belongs to me, as opposed to the station or anything like that. The only thing that the station has here is that live view unit, but the rest of it is ours, the Storm Science Network. So I bought a 4ME. I've got the live panel. We have the web presenter. We have a whole bunch of the converters, the HDMI to SDI converters. We also have the HD studio. That's also part. We use it as a router. And then we've got 3 Panasonic cameras or broadcast cameras that we use. We have now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 laptops that we use to bring people in. I've got 3 Stream Decks that I've programmed to make things work when I can't reach over and hit the panel. I've got a Rodecaster Pro that brings in the audio, and since it already has built-in mix minus, I didn't have to worry about using my other mixer to create a mix minus feed to go back out to the people on Zoom. And so all of that equipment combined, of course, light kits and all the other stuff, all of that is what makes it fly, and I've got it set up. So I've got a set of Stream Decks in front of me that's what I'm using to punch with, to bring up intros, to bring up clips, to bring people in. We use the OBS to do downstream keying. We use the ATEM to do the upstream keys. So it's all an interesting mix, and it all comes out pretty well.
Sounds great. So that Stream Deck, that's the little device with the programmable buttons, right?
Yeah. It's very neat. We use Companion with the ATEM so that I can set it up. I can either reach back and touch it, or I can punch it right here in front of me. And so typically I've got it set up where I can punch cameras up, put them into preview, pull clips up, pull up the lower thirds, and then change them and then hit them all at the same time. While I'm watching over to the side, I've got a couple of monitors built up so I can see all the Zoom elements that are coming in. We use Zoom, and I can pin certain people down at certain times. I leave one computer as the audio source. So that's the only audio source I really need to bring in, because it's got everybody in that feed. So I use that as the audio source, and everything else I pin out and send it out as different elements into the switcher, and then I can switch. I use the super source, which is amazing. You can bring them up. We've got an overlay that we put in. We can bring up 4 panelists all at the same time. So it looks very much like something you'd see on network.
And so when you do the weekly show, what are the elements that you're bringing in?
Right, for next week's going to be an interesting show. We're doing a panel to talk about, well, the week after to a panel about climate and hurricanes. So what I've done is I've set it up. I'll let everybody know you've got about 5 or 10 minutes, and then we're going to do discussion. I have Bill Reed, who's the former director of the Hurricane Center, as the moderator, and then my partner, Tim Smith, who's also kind of helping me out with this. So what we'll do is I'll set up a full Zoom call with all of them, and I'll bring them in. But on each one of the laptops, I'll also bring them in on Zoom and turn my feed off. So all you see is that. As I realize who's going to be talking first, I'll pin them down on whatever the laptop is, and then look over and assign them either to camera 1, 2, 3, 4 in the mixer. And then I'll bring them up in the super source overlay, and they're up in the boxes. I've got the overlays set up underneath it to where you can tell it, this is what we're talking about today. We've got our sponsors set up over in the corner, very much like I've got the logos here set up in the corner. So everything just pops up. It's ready to go. We hit the show promptly at 10. I hit the open, let Tim do a little bit of a speech, talk about our sponsors. We hit the sponsor promo, we go to build, and then we're off to the races and flying.
You're on camera during this too? So you're running?
No, that's why I have Tim there.
Oh, okay.
I can be on camera, but I choose not to, because there's only so many things that one guy can do.
Exactly.
I can do everything behind the scenes. I'm the technical director and the producer and everything else, but I have Bill Reed and I have Tim Smith to be the on-camera people. We're also texting each other doing this, so I can give them information and say, look, we need to wrap, things need to close up, or, you know, we need to go ahead and pick up a few more of these questions. Because in addition to doing all of that, I've also got a couple of other computers up, and I'm watching the comments come through, and they're usually questions, and I'm passing those along to Tim and Bill if their computer doesn't pick them up.
You know, you said you were a radio guy, so I didn't want to assume you couldn't.
Yeah, I could do that, but you know, I choose not to.
Yeah, that's good. So, sorry if you mentioned this before, but what are you shooting with?
I'm shooting with Panasonic. I wish I could pick one of these up. I've got a Panasonic DVX 400, the 4K cams, but we're actually outputting 1080p out for the web. But I've got 3 of those, and right now we're just using one. I have another one that I use for weathercasting. When I shoot down to get the chroma key back here, it's actually up here, and I can punch it so you can get a look to where I'm actually kind of standing on the map.
Okay, yeah, I've used the 200. That's a great camera.
Oh, I love it. I love that camera.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, it seems like you were better equipped and more prepared for this switchover than a lot of people were. I mean, did you have any kind of hiccups or any challenges, you know, making the switch over to going fully remote?
It was a little bit of a challenge when we first started, because I put things up very quickly. It had to happen in less than 24 hours. And so I just pulled out a light kit. I just kind of threw things together to make it work. And getting the audio frequencies right, because, you know, at home, you're not, and we've got a lot of radio frequencies that are going through here. I had to make sure that I was clear. And we had issues where every once in a while we'd get either a break or there'd be some type of static coming on the line. So I had to keep changing frequency so I could find out exactly where we were and get a clean shot there. Other than that, it was just a matter of waiting for the right time when I could take 2 or 3 days off, take it all down, and then put it up the way it should be, like it is now. But other than that, it was just a quick turnaround.
Okay, and with the TV station and the studio itself, now, are they back to a new normal now? I mean, are there restrictions lifted at this point?
No, the restrictions are still there. They're going to be there. We just got word from our corporate. The restrictions are going to continue until the end of the year in January 1st, and then they will take another look at it. So those of us who are working from home, we're going to continue to work from home. Those who are essential and have to go into the station, they will go into the station. But everything there is different than the way it was. Our master control is now split up. We actually have 3 television stations in one building. So all the master controls are split up. There's hardly anybody in the newsroom at all. Everybody's working remotely to get things done.
Let's say, looking ahead, there's a time where we're past all this and we're not having to make these decisions based on being in a pandemic. Do you anticipate that workflows will stay kind of hybrid, remote, in person in the future?
You know, looking at the business, and if I were running a business or a television station, I would look seriously at keeping this hybrid thing in place, because it means you don't have to have as many people in the building. You don't have to have such a big building. There's a lot of cost savings involved in doing remote work like this. Plus, this is easy for me. If there's something that happens really fast and we need to be on the air, I can just come in here and turn on the lights and the camera, and I'm ready to go in a moment's notice. So I think it's better to keep the hybrid, and I think it's probably where we're going to end up going, is keeping a hybrid type method. And right now I'm doing everything remotely with the exception of one show. I go in and I'm actually in the studio for an hour. I do the show and come right back home. So I think that pattern is probably what we're going to go with.